This week we take a look at the performances of some of the government ministries responsible for providing important social services. We will look at the health, education, and security sectors, among others. With this week's 411, I'm Shavani Rampasad. Stay with us. The first 6 months of the Ministry of Public Health were challenging, but it was also a period of notable achievements. Looking ahead, the ministry intends to make maternal health a key priority area. As the Public Health Ministry successfully completes its first 6 months under the new administration, the ministry can boast of commendable achievements despite great challenges.
First 6 months of managing the Ministry of Public Health has been positive. It has been a learning curve, mixed with challenges, connections, and changes. The new government, as you know, is determined and committed to improving quality care to be delivered to the Guyanese people. As you would recall, on our budget, about August thereabout, 23.2 billion Guyana dollars had been earmarked for the health sector, which is equivalent to about 10.5% of the national budget toward the development of the health sector. And so we'll continue to deliver primary health care.
Thousands of persons make use of the public health services offered by the government. In 2015, there was improvement in several areas, including capacity building and infrastructural upgrades. Regional health services departments excel in the services they provide. Medical outreaches accounted for 1,729 patients receiving treatment in Region 1, 7, 8, and 9, and a total of 70 patients undergoing successful surgeries at the Mabaruma, Letem, and Bartica Hospital. However, this is only the beginning. 2016 caters for a large-scale facelift for several health institutions countrywide, along with the improved working conditions for medical staff. These initiatives should boost the quality of services provided. In addition to these upgrades, the priority will be given to maternal health care, as the ministry seeks to work endlessly to reduce the infant mortality and maternal death rates.
My drive is to work on reducing the maternal and infantile mortality rate in Guyana, and of course to work closely with the mental health unit of the country to see if we can bring mental health under some semblance of control.
It is the government's goal to ensure all Guyanese have access to quality health care. For the staff of the Ministry of Education, the past 6 months has been a period of reviewing and analyzing to identify gaps and changes needed to deliver on a new mandate for the local education system.
This new mandate of the Ministry of Education spells out a sweeping shift from the churning out of top performers to producing well-rounded Guyanese capable of moving the country forward.
I don't want an education system that is just concentrating on children regurgitating information. We have become great at regurgitation. We have all these, impressive exam figures and so on. But for me, the education of the child is a far more complicated matter because you're dealing with the growth of a child, and that growth has to take in art, culture, music, and so on.
The task of reforming the education system is not an easy one. It will be a long process, but the foundation work has started. These include an examination of the establishment of the various departments, meeting and engaging the different heads, experienced practitioners and stakeholders to get them involved in the process, countrywide audits of each school across the country, and a commission of inquiry into the previous education system. Key consultations were also held with the sector's stakeholders. This was done to help draft the policies and strategies for the new education system.
My understanding of how you arrive at legislation is really through consultation with the stakeholders. You have to have massive consultations. They have to be informed consultations, not just chatting for the sake of chatting, but really out of systematic consultations, you would then derive essentially the principles that will guide your legislation. If you don't do it this way, then the implementation becomes a real problem. It's no point making laws that don't have the full benefit of the widest consultation among the people.
Restructuring of the education system also encompasses creating an enabling environment to give necessary attention to all areas of education. Particular emphasis was placed on reworking old policies that guide the development and implementation of these new areas.
Beginning in the area of youth, we have done a national plan which speaks to 5 years, and we're in the process of having that finalized so that we can develop an implementation plan to ensure that all sectors are involved, particularly in the implementation of the activities that are outlined in that plan, so that the objectives that are arrived at will be beneficial, in a very cross-cutting way across all regions of Guyana.
Other achievements over the past 6 months include the push towards the use of technology in education delivery. To this end, there was the creation of a smart school classroom at North Rheinveld Multilateral School, the first in Guyana, and the conversion of the 1 laptop per family into the 1 laptop per teacher program.
Passing examinations, it's very important to pass them,
Right.
but it cannot be all that you're doing. So yes, well-rounded students, we're talking about producing 21st century citizens. 21st century citizens means that we have to really intensify our work and our efforts in relation to, smart classrooms, for instance. Getting children really trained to use tablets, to use the computers. If you look and see what is happening in relation to educational technology across the world, you realize how far behind we are.
Other initiatives taken that directly benefited youths, particularly in the area of education and training and capacity building, included expanding the intake into institutions such as the Kurukuru Training Center.
As it relates to looking at the technical and vocational training programs, in the area of training, what we are currently doing, we are reviewing the curriculum to ensure that it is in keeping with what is happening with other technical institutions around the region meaning Caribbean in this case. And so we're pretty much up to speed as it relates to that. We've also gotten technical assistance and support from international agencies that support and would be doing a lot of work in those areas. Agencies such as UNICEF, the Canadian High Commission here is also supporting some of our technical work. They are collaborating with us to provide technical assistance and guidance to support the Linden Technical Institute to ensure that the curriculum that are designed prepares a youth that is work ready for the 21st century, not only to function in Guyana in our local setting, but to function globally moving forward. That pretty much is a representation of what is happening throughout our technical institutions as it relates to Sophia Training Center. Ryman Irving Training Center is also included in that.
Developing a cadre of highly qualified professionals to drive innovation and lead progress remains one of the biggest gaps and potentially greatest hurdles for Guyana's education sector. The government has recognized this gap and will be embarking on several initiatives to bolster education and training in the sector. Structuring of the system is critical to enhancing the learning outcomes needed for Guyana to reach its potential.
In order to address one dimension of inclusive growth, which is the protection of disadvantaged groups, government must put in place measures to improve the efficiency of the country's social welfare programs. These measures will ensure availability of social safety nets to reduce poverty and to promote opportunities for special groups in all 10 administrative regions.
The last 6 months has seen the Ministry of Social Protection focusing on bettering the services offered to the citizens. Some units and departments were delinked, and where needed, new divisions were established. This was done to ensure that the country's disadvantaged groups received the much-needed services, not only in Georgetown but throughout the country. When the government took office in May, it recognized that it couldn't address all the issues facing the populace financially. Hence, it opted to establish a special projects unit. This unit is responsible for seeking funding from donor agencies to roll out programs. Within the social aspect, the probation department was removed from the social services department. The Men's and Women's Affairs Bureau have been merged and a public relations department created.
Within the social aspect, that is the social services, we sought to remove the probation from the social services. They were combined together. And so now we have removed the social services back to the Cornhill Street building, and they are more comfortable. They can provide service to the populace, especially our senior citizens, in a more comfortable and relaxed atmosphere. With regards to the labor department, we have sought to restructure. What we met was the merger of the industrial relations and the occupation health and safety. And we have sought to remove that partnership, to separate them. We feel that given the many industries that are being set up in the country, the large mining and other manufacturing industries, that the need for occupation health and safety is greater at this time, and so we need to ensure that we have the capacity to deal with it.
The ministry also sought to restructure those existing departments and benevolent centers that are under its purview. In doing so, these institutions are better equipped to serve citizens.
One case in point I can highlight is the night shelter. And I can speak about the night shelter today and smile, because it's a pleasant place to go to. We have not completed our objective. We have not reached all of our objectives with regards to the night shelter. But we're getting there. And as we move along, we have been able to attract partners from the private sector, and I want to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt thanks to them for the work that they have done and the contributions they have made to make that shelter into a pleasant place today. So those are some of the things that we have done in the ministry.
In terms of the ministry's programs, efforts were made to partner with the Canadian government to have persons from various Indigenous communities trained in various aspects of social work.
We were able to partner with the Canadian government to achieve our objective of having persons from various Indigenous communities be trained in the various aspects of social work, and also to be informed of the services which the ministry provides. And that was a big one for us in the ministry, because having come into the ministry and having been associated with the ministry by my work in Parliament for a very long time, we recognize that despite all of the services being offered, that our Indigenous brothers and sisters were not benefiting as the coastlanders from the services which we provide. And it has to do with several things: culture, language barrier, and also geography. It was felt at the heads level that if we can have persons from those communities who speak the language and we train them, then we can have ambassadors in those communities that can be able to point persons in those communities towards the services which we provide, and so assist us in bridging that gap. And we feel very strongly that this is one of the mechanisms that we can use to address the poverty, the high level of poverty within our indigenous communities.
The ministry also partnered with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the Ministry of Agriculture to make the Hugo Chavez Center for Rehabilitation and Reintegration self-sufficient by introducing a number of initiatives, such as fish and poultry rearing and kitchen garden. Meanwhile, as it relates to the protection of workers' rights, the ministry's Department of Labor closed 750 complaints between May to November, while 372 were closed for the previous months. Some 820 inspections were conducted between the periods May to November. These inspections unearthed some of the atrocious conditions under which workers have been functioning for over a decade. Some of the employers were given a period for correction depending on the conditions, while those who had major breaches of the law were penalized.
We give us a period for correction. Some persons had a shorter period. That is depending on the condition and things that were happening in the country. So the first step that we did, and that is not to do with fatality, however, and accidents. Fatalities was definitely charges. There was not a fatality under this new government watch that we did not investigate and charge, and person went before the court and paid fine. We had families being compensated in terms of the negotiation. And so with fatalities and accidents, they're not any, we can't negotiate those. In terms of corrections with the, and payments, those were must. So what they were given an opportunity to really correct, and that was our first approach as government, to have them to correct and better conditions and to educate both employee, and we have been doing that and making some excellent achievements in those areas. So that was the approach generally. One, failure to comply, that is when we had to go before the court. But most of them, like I mentioned, they did comply and start their corrections.
During the period May to December, the ministry recovered $59 million of owed wages to workers. Between the period January to May, $20 million was recovered, bringing the total to $79 million for 2015. This is compared to $31 million recovered for 2014.
One of the presentation and training and negotiation that we had with a major company, when they stepped forward to make their payments, they did overpay by $1.8 million, in which immediately when I recognized that, called them in and to correct that. So I mentioned that because my role as the minister is to look at employer and employee. So the employee too also is pleased, because not only we will check to see that the worker received the right amount, but also that the company pay the right amount. Every company that I have inspected, however, workers have benefited. They were companies that were underpaying workers, and even if it was by $1, it added up. They were a company who was wrongfully deducting money from workers that they had to repay to the workers. There were companies that were not paying the workers their overtime and other benefits and had to do that. Millions of dollars workers have benefited from, because coming out from the inspection, the correction, and what we've noticed, workers benefited not only financially, but the conditions that they were working under. Definitely we had some major shift in that aspect. So I think that the inspection, I mean, it was hectic and, with all the challenges, but I think it really served both employees well so far in the country.
Additionally, between May to November, the ministry conducted 12 training sessions compared to 7 that were done during the first quarter of the year. In moving forward, the ministry will be rolling out a number of programs to better the lives of vulnerable groups. One such initiative is the Family Court, which is set to come on stream in 2016. The ministry will also put a system in place where pensioners will no longer have pension books, but instead will be able to receive their pensions using their identification cards.
Since taking office, the administration has placed emphasis on improving security across Guyana. Under the guidance of the Public Security Ministry, a number of new measures and changes are being implemented to ensure law and order prevails.
The need for security is paramount in the maintenance of law and order in society. In the coalition government, the man heading the public security sector is Minister Kemraj Ramjatan. Under guidance from President David Granger, a draft crime-fighting strategy was laid out. The implementation of this strategy is currently on the way, and it is being used to address crime across the country.
It largely has to do with police administration, as we have it here, identifying high incidence locations for serious crimes, and in a process of a mapping of it and highlighting where on that map there are congregations or accumulations of high crime instances. Then police organization and training, which is a big part. It has to do with enhancing the quality of the policeman at work, really enhancing his capacity and capability. And that is largely strengthening the CID, which we have done, increasing the number of detectives, strengthening of the counter-narcotics unit at the police force, along with also making some more new recruits at Kanu. Of course, we do have now a big development in that we want to create an umbrella organization in relation to narcotics the fight against narcotics, by creating an umbrella organization called NANA, an anti-unit agency, national it will be more an agency rather than a unit.
The strategy also addresses the deployment of police ranks.
We wanted lots more patrols, whether on foot, bicycle, horseback, or vehicles, and increasing those mobile patrols, especially mobile patrols, in and around the hot spots that we have in Georgetown, in Berbice, wheresoever, as the map reflects, depending on the information that we get. And reducing the response time for these incidents. Seizing illegal firearms was another aspect of police deployment. And then there was a fourth category dealing with the assets and equipment. We have to increase our assets and equipment, like breathalyzers for traffic offenders, speed guns. We have to get more, I'd like to use the word tint meters, so that we can check out the tints for vehicles.
The public has a role in helping the primary law enforcement agency to fight crime. In this context, the need for improved police communication has been noted, and measures are being put in place to address this. The process, however, is a bit slow.
Take, for example, more mobile patrols depend on lots more monies to have for buying cars and buying motorcycles and so on. Indeed, the 2015 budget, as we proved of it, had a number under its capital expenditure, and we have put in for those cars, motorbikes, bicycles, and so on already. The commissioners indicated to me that by the end of the year we should be able to have lots more cars, to the extent that almost all the station will have mobile vehicles to have the mobility that we want in the police force. Every single police station.
The conditions of police stations were also targeted given their poor conditions.
There's at some police station where policemen can't even cook there because the kitchen is in such deteriorated situation. The barrack rooms are in bad situation. And degrading circumstances kind of degrade the effort that is put into policing. So the capital works for all of that we have put in the 2016 budget, which will come out very early. In the meantime, I have asked that policemen try to clean up their quarters to the extent of getting it more habitable and to the extent that they can perform better with better surroundings and so on.
More training has taken place and overseas specialists have been enlisted to facilitate the upgrading of local lawmen and women. The use of closed-circuit television cameras has resulted in training being ramped up also in this area. Forensic ballistics training is also being facilitated and other specialized areas too. For Minister Ramjatan, the police force will be better able to serve the public with what he described as a hands-off approach, which is free from public interference.
Police commissioner and all his assistant commissioners and deputy commissioners and the commanders and so on were saying that unlike a previous time, massive interference used to stultify their operational matters. I have taken it off. As a matter of fact, I even have asked them to get a public relations department to say about the good works they're doing. And it is important because I really feel that once we train them professionally with the modern methods, they are the best persons to do the operationalization of the police force. We will do the grand things, policies and so on, and get the equipment and get the finances and the capital assets to give them. But we should not interfere with operational matters. And I believe it is because of my non-interference or government's non-interference in that regard, we are seeing how convicts and the felons that are committing the crime out there, how they are being caught. A lot of them are now being caught, prosecuted. We have to strengthen the prosecutorial department too, because we like to see some more conviction.
The measures implemented over the 6 months have already begun to bear fruit. These included the gun amnesty, more intelligence gathering through greater public cooperation, and more recently the launch of Operation Dragnet. The latter has resulted in all members of the joint services being placed on high alert across Guyana. Far more crimes are now being solved, for example, but much more work, the minister explained, still remains to be done.
Mess that we are in, the fact that we never take the British security sector reform monies to ensure that 4 or 5 years ago that this process would have started, it has ended up in a huge mess. And it is going to be a Herculean effort. And there will be a lot of naysayers out there that we are not solving. Well, indeed, it might seem so, but a lot of work is being done to professionalize and modernize this police force. But it will take some time for results to be seen, for the fruits of our efforts now to be born. And so, please, you have to bear with us, because it is a huge mess.
In 2016 and beyond, the Public Security Minister is confident that an even greater impact will be made as more measures are put in place to ensure the safety of citizens and the preservation of law and order throughout the nation.
The coalition government recognizes that ethnic disparity does not exist in Guyana. This is unacceptable given Guyana's multi-ethnic composition. The government has therefore been working to stamp out all forms of discrimination. The objective is to have a society where all Guyanese can have equal access to the resources, services, and other facilities provided by the state. This is primarily the mandate of the Ministry of Social Cohesion under the leadership of Minister Abna Ali.
The Social Cohesion Ministry is determined to fulfill its mandate by finding ways and methods to tackle discrimination. Sensitization sessions were already held in Regions 1, 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10. Pilot projects are also being implemented to reduce inequalities and achieve social cohesion.
It will not happen in a day or a month. It is going to take some time because people must want to have this change. They must want to have this togetherness into our communities. We must stop fostering race. So you are Afro-Guyanese and I'm Indo-Guyanese. We recognize that we have differences in our cultures, in our race and whatever, but those differences must not be barriers to development.
The admission that Guyana is racially divided and segregated is the first step in addressing the issue of ethnic discrimination and insecurities. It is the view of the government that social cohesion could be achieved, but it would take some time.
It is because of these disparities, that these ethnic conflicts and so on in our country,
that has prompted this new government to establish this new ministry of social cohesion, because we find that there are lots of areas where the focus is on ethnicity. And I must tell you that at the last general and regional elections, this was very, very evident.
It is the belief of the administration that in order to break the race barriers, young people must be engaged. It is against this background that a lot of emphasis is being placed by the Ministry of Social Cohesion on empowering youths and educating them on the need for ethnic harmony.
In some areas, their focus is more on economic development. And in some areas, the focus is how we can gainfully engage our young people. And that is one of the things on the active consideration, because we're going to be looking at, for example, sports grounds, helping them to upkeep the sports grounds. In Region 1, for example, one area has asked me if I can help them with providing lavatory facilities, toilet facilities at a playground. And I'm examining their proposal.
Having done countrywide consultations, the ministry is now in a better position to craft its programs for implementation. It is expected that these programs would help bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
I believe that 2020, we are going to be able to take Guyana to another level. I believe that by then, people will recognize that this is what we need. We need national unity for development. We need to have a good life for all Guyanese. And to have a good life, we've all got to cooperate. We've got to work together. Political persuasion doesn't mean anything at this point in time.
The Ministry of Social Cohesion is committed to working with all other ministries, civil society organizations, communities, and everyone to rid Guyana of ethnic discrimination. The ministry was created in May this year by the coalition government.
That has brought us to the end of Guyana 411 for this week. Check out our programs on our website. We are also on Facebook and YouTube. From all of us here at GINA, we hope you have a wonderful Christmas.